I never thought the day I'd be publicly humiliated would become the day everything changed. Back then, people only saw what they wanted to see when they looked at me. The cheap suit, the old car, the way I kept my head down and spoke carefully like I was afraid to take up too much space. They didn't see the nights I slept in my office, the years I spent being underestimated, or the quiet promise I made to myself that one day I'd prove them all wrong. It happened on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that feels ordinary until it isn't. I was standing in the lobby of a luxury hotel downtown, waiting for a client meeting that could decide the future of my company. I wasn't even late, but I was invisible right up until I wasn't. The security manager walked straight toward me, eyes cold, voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You can't be here," he said, already reaching for his radio. I smiled politely, tried to explain I was meeting someone upstairs, but he cut me off with a laugh that stung more than his words. "People like you don't have meetings here," he said. Heads turned. Suits slowed down. Phones came out, and in that moment I felt small like I'd felt so many times before. But instead of backing away, I stayed right where I was. Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I asked him calmly to call the person I was meeting. He refused. Said I was wasting his time. Said I should be grateful he wasn't calling the police. That's when my phone rang. Loud. Echoing. The man I was meeting, the hotel's biggest investor, asking where I was. I answered, looked the security manager dead in the eye and said, "I'm in your lobby. Your staff won't let me through." The color drained from his face so fast it almost felt cinematic. That moment was the hook, but the real story didn't start there. It started years earlier, when I was the kid nobody picked first, the guy co-workers talked over in meetings, the one whose ideas were praised only after someone else repeated them louder. I learned early that confidence is something people assume you don't have if you don't look like them. And once they decide that it's an uphill fight to change their minds. I built my company quietly. No flashy announcements, no borrowed prestige. Just long hours, missed weekends, and a stubborn refusal to quit when doors closed in my face. There were times I almost believed what they said about me, that I didn't belong in rooms like that success was reserved for people who sounded a certain way, dressed a certain way, came from the right zip codes. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered how it felt to be dismissed without being known. And I kept going. Back in that lobby after the call ended, the security manager suddenly found his manners. Apologies poured out forced smiles, nervous laughter. He offered to escort me upstairs himself. I thanked him politely and said no. I walked past him alone, shoulders back, heart pounding, knowing every step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The meeting upstairs was tense, not because of the deal, but because everyone knew what had just happened. The investor asked me about it casually, like he was testing the temperature of the room. I told him the truth without drama, without exaggeration. Just facts. Silence followed. Heavy, uncomfortable. We closed the deal that afternoon. And then something unexpected happened. The investor requested a formal review of the hotel's security practices. Not out of revenge, but out of principle. He said, "If this is how you treat people before knowing who they are, you have a bigger problem than bad PR." That was the turning point. The part of the story where effort meets opportunity and something finally gives. But victory didn't feel the way I imagined it would. There was no rush of triumph, no urge to gloat. Mostly, I felt tired. Tired of fighting assumptions. Tired of carrying the weight of other people's ignorance. A week later, I ran into the same security manager again. He avoided eye contact at first, then finally approached me, voice low, almost shaking. He apologized again this time, without an audience. He said he'd made assumptions. He said he was wrong. I listened. I didn't forgive him out loud, but I didn't punish him either. I just said, "Next time, don't decide who someone is before they speak." That should have been the end, but stories like this rarely stop there. Word spread. Articles were written. People online argued about whether I'd overreacted or not reacted enough. Some said I should have sued. Others said I should have let it go. Strangers debated my experience like it was a thought experiment instead of a real moment that cut deep. What they didn't see was how that moment changed me. I stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. I spoke up when I was interrupted. I corrected people when they underestimated me. Not aggressively, not bitterly, just firmly. And slowly, the way people treated me changed. Or maybe I changed first and they followed. The real win wasn't the deal or the apology or the headlines. It was the quiet confidence that settled in afterward. The knowledge that I didn't need to prove my worth to anyone who refused to see it. That being underestimated was no longer a curse, but a kind of camouflage. Today, I walk into rooms knowing exactly who I am. And when someone looks at me and assumes I don't belong, I almost smile. Because I've learned something powerful. The people who judge you too quickly are usually the ones least prepared for who you really are. So here's where I leave it, because this is where I want to hear from you. Was I right to stand my ground, or should I have handled it differently? Have you ever been judged before being heard, and how did you respond? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them. And if you've seen injustice up close or lived through it yourself, share your story. Let's talk about where confidence comes from, who gets denied it, and why sometimes the quietest people in the room have the strongest spine.